everyone, and welcome to this PV Magazine webinar, Learning from PV Module Manufacturing Nonconformities. In this PV Magazine webinar, we will examine nonconformity in the PV manufacturing process. We'll define manufacturing nonconformities and classify the ways that they arise. We'll also explain the distribution of nonconformity along the manufacturing line. SDS will provide insights on the detection process and survey the ways to mitigate risks. The presentation will walk through an SDS case study on nonconformities, and attendees will walk away from the webinar with an improved understanding of the main issues in PV manufacturing at each step of the line and a classification of their severity. Today's PV Magazine webinar will feature a definition of manufacturing conformity and that classification. We'll take a look at new trends due to changes in PV cell design, encapsulation issues, and more. And then we'll make some recommendations to reduce those risks. We'll follow up with the question and answer session after that. I'm joined today by Adrian Pellerin. He's the head of technology at Synergy Technical Services, known as STS, and Carlos Sanchez, quality manager at SolarPack. Thank you both.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. So with 13 years of experience in the PV industry in China, Adrian has been involved in various activities such as inspection team management, PV components reliability testing, and introduction to the market of innovation of technologies and product certification. He's currently based in France as the head of technology at STS, an ISO 17020 accredited inspection body. He's leading technical advisory projects and provides technical recommendations as well as risk mitigation to STS clients. Carlos, with 9 years of experience in the photovoltaic sector, has been carrying out quality assurance and quality control activities, both at source and on site, participating in quality inspections, control, and company hiring and quality requirements negotiations with technical advisors and clients. Carlos is currently located in Spain as quality manager with SolarPack, a multinational company specialized in development, construction, commercialization, and operation of large-scale PV projects. He's leading the quality department, involving quality at source, quality on site, and ISO 9001 certification. And I'm Ryan Kennedy, editor at PV Magazine USA. I'll be your moderator today. If you have questions, feel free to submit them in the chat throughout the presentation, and we will have a Q&A session at the end. But without further ado, I'd like to invite Adrian on and we can begin the presentation. Thanks, Adrian.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Ryan, for the very nice introduction. So with Carlos, we are very grateful to have been given this opportunity to speak about a very interesting topic, so nonconformities. We start with a short disclaimer. So we mentioned that the presentation today is mostly about educational purpose, and we are using some pictures, but we are not referring to any manufacturer. Let's have a quick look on the content of this webinar. So we'll start by providing a definition of what is a nonconformity, and then I will share with you some statistics about the past couple of years from our inspection team, in order to have an understanding of how is the distribution of nonconformities along a PV module manufacturing line, and what are the most frequent nonconformities reported by our team. During the third phase, Carlos will give you some insight about QA and QC related to PV module manufacturing. Then we'll go deep into some analysis of, for example, of nonconformities that have recently happened in our industry, and we'll conclude with the takeaways. Before going into the details, let's have a short introduction about STS. So we are an ISO 17020 accredited company providing inspection, testing, auditing, and technical advisory services in the renewable sector. We have been established in 2010, and so far we have been doing the production supervision of more than 35 gigawatts of PV modules. In parallel, we are also providing services for other products, such as energy storage system, and we have been doing factory inspection and the testing witness for more than 6 gigawatt hour of energy storage system. And we're also active in the supply chain assessments, and we have been auditing more than 55 gigawatt of capacity of P module manufacturing, as well as upstream products. Regarding our team, we have more than 60 inspectors, auditors, and engineering staff. We have been performing more than 200 projects yearly so far. Okay, so let's go back to our topic and start with the definition of nonconformity. And in fact, it's very straightforward. You can see that basically a nonconformity, what we also call NC, is a failure to meet a requirement. So we can start by mentioning that there are different categories of nonconformities, classed by level of severity. And typically we have 3 levels. So the first one is a critical, which is linked to safety hazard that could result in unsafe conditions for either the people who are operating the system or the equipment itself. Then we have the major nonconformities, which are likely to affect the ability of a product to fulfill its function. And then we have the minor nonconformities, which are not immediately affecting the performance of the product, but we can present a risk on the medium or long term. Now let's define what do we mean by a requirement. So we have different categories as well. And requirements are basically the expectation from a module buyer. So the first category is about product specification, like the dimension, electrical parameters of the modules, or the components that are entering to manufacture this module. Depending on the country, we have also different kind of applicable standards. And according to the climate where the module will be installed, also they have different qualifications that are requested. For example, salt mist spray for installation near the sea. We have also some manufacturing process parameters or QC control points that are also mentioned in the requirements. For example, what are the requirements for EVA gel content or soldering strength? Those are some typical examples. And also we have some requirements related to the final quality control, such as visual inspection, maximum power measurement, or EL images. So it's important to mention that the requirement must be agreed as soon as possible in the purchasing process and before the manufacturing starts. So these are agreed between the module buyer and the seller, so the module manufacturer. And also what is important to mention is that this list of requirements must be as exhaustive as possible for the buyer in order to mitigate a maximum of risk when the production will start. We can also make some remark about how we handle the requirements at STS. So we do have one specific document that we called order technical requirements, and that gather all the requirements from the client, in one single document. And then it's easy to visualize if there is any missing information before the production starts. And on top of that, also STS can provide some support to our client to evaluate the risk for each requirement in order to take the best educated decision. Let's have a look now on the distribution of the nonconformities. So what we have on the screen is a typical PV modules manufacturing line, starting with a glass cleaning on the bottom left, and finishing with the final quality control on the top left. And then we have nonconformities for each station. So we are classifying minor nonconformities highlighted here in orange, and major nonconformities in red. So let's start with the glass cleaning. The main nonconformities that we find for glass cleaning are related to scratches on the glass surface, which may either happen during the manufacturing of the glass or during the transfer from the pallet to the conveyor, or from the conveyor to the next station. Next step, we have the stringing, which is also prone to different kind of non-conformities. The first one is what we call V-shaped crack, and you can see a picture on the right showing how this defect looks like. And we have also some issues linked to desoldering or rebounds wire deviations, something that we'll investigate into detail later in this presentation. We have also observed some flux residue on the cell, and this one is classified as a minor nonconformity. Let's jump to the next station, which is a layup. So the purpose of the layup is to make sure that all the layers of the module are well stacked and aligned together. But in some cases, we notice some offsets. So either some space between the strings, which is uneven. And also we have been observing some EVA layer offset from the glass, which could lead to issue of delamination starting from the edge of the glass. So this one are classified as major issues. And we have also some issues related to the soldering of the wire from the string to the bus bar of the modules, which could also lead to some local hotspots. In terms of lamination, we have been observing some inclusion in active areas, so it's pollution coming from the previous steps that are noticeable on the cell surface. And sometimes we also have some what we call air bubbles that are trapped inside the laminate during this process. The next step is called edges trimming. So the purpose here is to remove the excess of EVA from the edges of the module after lamination. And if this job is not properly done, there is sometimes some remaining EVA part on the laminate, which may affect the framing at the next stage. Speaking about the framing, we have also several kinds of non-conformity that can be reported. The first one is about some gaps between the frame profiles. So basically, to assemble the frame on the module, there are 4 profiles, and we can observe some gap on the side. Sometimes the profiles are not well aligned, and we can also see either some lack of silicone sealant or overflow of silicone sealant during this framing process. The next stage is about a junction box assembly. And in this case, sometimes we see also some issue of soldering area, which is too small between the bus bar of the module on the back and the terminals of the junction box. The next step is a final quality control. And here we also observe one typical major nonconformity, which is cell cracks. In fact, the cracks are not appearing at this stage, but they are appearing at previous stages, for example, during stringing or lamination. But they are observed at the EL images stage. During the final quality control, we notice also some insufficient cleaning, so some remaining part of EVA or silicone gel or a fingerprint on the module that we do classify as a minor nonconformity. So if we stop for a few seconds here, we can see that there are some nonconformities happening at every single stage of the manufacturing process. We can say that no process step is free of nonconformities. And we can also see that there are several major nonconformities that could result into a fast performance loss of the module if it's not well addressed at the factory. So once we have seen the distribution of those nonconformities on the line, the next question is to ask ourselves how frequently those nonconformities are happening. So it's the purpose of the next slide. And here you can see a Pareto of nonconformities, so our top 10 of NCs that have happened, that have been reported during the past 2 years by our inspection team. So you can see that we had a total of more than 9,000 nonconformities during production supervision of PV modules. And when we have a look on the top 3, so the first one is the EVA laying offset, what we mentioned earlier. Next one is about missing silicone sealant. It might seem not so important, but in fact, it could lead to some severe issues such as glass breakage once the module are installed. So it's one topic that we will also investigate into details later in this presentation. Some also issues about soldering areas that are too small, which can lead to some hotspots. Then we have 4 minor nonconformities. So unclean edges during the trimming process, lack of cleaning at the end of the manufacturing, some silicone gel overflow also on the between the frame and the glass or on the glass surface, and as well some flux residue on the cell surface. And to close this top 10, we have also 3 major nonconformities. We have some desoldering during stringing or ribbons and wire deviation in the position 10, which are linked together, and that may lead also to severe issues on the module performance. And we have also some frame gap that we're also often seeing in factory, and which may lead also to some mechanical damage if it's not well addressed. So later today, we will analyze into details 3 nonconformities, so missing silicone sealant, desoldering during stringing, and ribbons and wire deviations. But before that, I will give the floor back to Ryan, as Carlos will make some introduction about how SolarPack is using STS services, and will share some example of nonconformities. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. And we'd like to invite Carlos on for his portion of the presentation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you to PV Magazine and STS for inviting me to this webinar. As Ryan previously said, SolarPack is a multinational company specialized in the development, construction, operation and maintenance, and commercialization of solar PV plants, with presence in some geographies like North America, Latin America, Africa, Asia, or Europe. As you can see in this slide, our purpose is to accelerate the transition to a clean and affordable energy for all. I will talk about the quality assurance and quality control to be followed by a control company like STS during the PV module manufacturing. I will show some findings and pictures of the finding detected by STS inspectors during our latest projects. And finally, I will briefly add some information regarding methods for dealing with nonconformities. So I would like to start saying that the main objective of the quality assurance and quality control is to get an overall improvement of the quality. And which is the main difference between quality assurance and quality control? As you can see here, while in the quality assurance, we are trying to prevent defects, and for that, we need to ensure that processes and procedures are appropriate and correctly implemented. During the quality control, what we are doing is to identify defects through inspections. And during the PV module manufacturing, or for a PV module supply, these are the main activities related to quality assurance and quality control. While in the quality assurance, we have the contract review and pre-production audit, we can say that for quality control, we have the production supervision, pre-sealing inspection, and loading supervision as the key inspection to be carried out. In here, we can see the control review. Which are the key points to be checked in the control review? Well, I only added these 2, technical specifications and quality control to be implemented. In the technical specifications, what we need to check is that all the things included in the contract are according to market standards and our client requirements. And in the quality control to be implemented, we need to ensure that all the tests to be carried out are well defined. The acceptance criteria is also included. And also we can include the batch size definition and so. Once that the contract is signed, we need to carry out a pre-production audit. So we need to hire a control company like STS in order to do that. What the inspectors are going to check in here? Well, mainly well, obviously, module certifications, the BOM, so we need to check whether the material is included in the CDF or have their current certifications. Lab testing equipment is also going to be checked, calibration, or check that all the tests required to be carried out can be done as per our requirements in their facilities or whatever. And then it's going to be checked the manufacturing, all the stages included in the manufacturing. So we can see in here that material and product storage is going to be checked, and obviously the control of material production and dispatch, all the stages that Adrian showed in the previous slides. Once that the audit has been carried out, some findings or defects are going to be detected by the inspectors. So the manufacturer is going to be required to fix all the defects, and then once everything is fixed, a counter audit will be carried out in order to verify that everything is in line with our requirements in order to start the production. Once everything is fine, a notice to proceed is sent to the manufacturer, and the manufacturing can start. Okay, now related to the production supervision, what we can see in here is that the inspectors are required to check on a daily basis, and this is normally done 24/7, although it could be also done 12/7. They are going to check that the used material belong to the approved BOM of the project, the material storage conditions, so you know, the temperature, the humidity, of the chambers where all the material is stored. The incoming quality control is also going to be ensured that the manufacturer is doing correctly this activity. And then the production is going to be checked again on a daily basis, all the stages again. And other things will be checked on a daily basis, like the calibration of the sun simulator, or the storage of your finished products, your modules. Now, regarding the pre-shipment inspection, this is a key point for all of us. In here, this is a key point because batch release is related to this pre-shipment inspection. In here, we are requesting test and check to the manufacturer in order to release all the batches. So I have included in here two possibilities. And both we have worked with STS with both of them. One of them is the manufacturer has an accredited internal lab, and in this case, all the tests and checks could be carried out in the internal lab. Obviously, all the tests are required to be witnessed by STS inspector. And the other possibility is that the manufacturer don't have this accredited internal lab, or maybe you or your final client prefer that some or all of the tests are required to be carried out on an external lab. In this case, I have included two different stages. So the first one should be the pre-shipment inspection itself. So in this case, we are requesting the manufacturer in their own facilities to do or to carry out some particular tests and checks. And in here, we are going to require a testing sampling according to the ISO 2859. And the tests that I think that we need to request in this stage are visual inspection, EL, and flash or by facility. All of them should be carried out on batch basis. So the testing sampling could be done according to the ISO 2859, but for all the batches. And other tests that could be carried out in this stage could be with liquid, vagal content, or other tests like this. And in this particular case, this test should be customized, not according to the ISO 2859. And then the second stage is that we are going to require, in any case, some tests in an external lab. And Now we are not going to use the ISO 2859, but a reduced testing sampling. Now the sampling is going to be reduced, and I'm including in here the test that I think that we need to require in any case. And these tests are flash and by facility, and this should be done on a batch basis, LITID and LID. In this case, in my opinion, it would be fine if we request test on cell basis, although you can also customize this test on batch basis or a certain quantity of tests for a project or whatever. Then we have the PIV, and again, this test should be requested on a batch basis or bond basis, or if you want to customize this test, again, a certain number of PIV tests for your project, you can do like that also. I think that all these tests should be carried out in an external lab. And then we have other possible tests included in here that could be requested, and this would be, well, low irradiance, EVA content, mechanical load test, EL again, and this particular test should be customized. So you should request, I don't know, one low irradiance per batch or something like this, but this is up to you. And finally, the last stage of the quality control in what we have included is the loading supervision. In my opinion, this loading supervision should be done for all the batches to be loaded, but on a random basis. So not all the containers should be required to be checked, but this obviously this is a decision that every company needs to take. But well, this is the last stage of the quality control that a control company like STS is going to carry out with you. And now I will add some picture. I will show you some pictures of findings detected by STS inspectors during their daily inspections. Some of them have been already commented by Adrian in the previous slides. As you can see in here, well, material could be found on a wrong place, or forms are not correctly filled, or the humidity or temperature are not correctly monitored, or maybe they are out of the SOP requirements. Sometimes workers are found working without gloves. Some inspectors don't know very well the EL criteria. This is important if they are going to check the EL pictures. So these are common findings that are going to be found on a daily basis, mainly, well, some of them at least. In here, you can see some other pictures, fingerprints on cell surface, on qualified spilled sealant. As you can see in the picture, in the corner, some sealant is missed. There is a misalignment in the soldering in the next picture. And you can see also a dent on a backseat. Obviously, these pictures belong to a monofacial module. In the next pictures, we can see again missing of silicon sealant in the corner is pretty clear, or a junction box that is not correctly placed. We can see also fixing tape that is placed on the ribbon. This is not allowed also. Or we can find faults during the evaluating. And finally, I have added these other three pictures. So the soldering or ribbon deviation, this is a serious problem, but this is happening from time to time. Or EVA not placed in the center. I don't know if you can see clearly on the picture, but it's not well placed, the EVA. And the last picture is showing that the cleaning process was not carried out correctly. And now, as I told you before, I will add, but only briefly, some methods for dealing with nonconformities. I think that the most important thing to keep in mind related to a nonconformity is that what we are trying is to prevent the defect to be repeated. So we are trying to avoid the repetition of issues, not only solving the detected issue. And for that, it's very important, well, it's critical to identify the root cause. And for identifying the root cause, there are some methods, and I have included in here only three. These are the 5 Whys, the 5M, and 8D. You can see the 5 Whys is pretty simple and is used for moderate issues. Is I think, in my opinion, is the less commonly used in this industry, but is used on site and well in other places. So this method consists asking 5 Whys in succession until the Y is not producing a good response to you. And this is going to allow us to analyze the root cause. Then the next method is the 5M or Ishikawa diagram or method or Fishbone method. And this method is widely used by STS. I think that Adrian is going to show you later on some examples with this 5M method. And this method consists, as you can see in here, is like a fish, with the head showing the defect, and we are going to add like fish bones, all the possible causes related to this 5M method: material, manpower, machine, and milieu. And finally, we have the 8D discipline model. And this particular method is, in my opinion, the best method to be used by a manufacturer in case that a serious nonconformity is detected. Again, as the other methods, what is trying to do is to prevent the repetition of nonconformities with the corrective actions that we are going to include within this method. I'm not going to read this slide, but as you can see, what we are going to do in this 8D method is a problem description. We need to establish the team. We need to isolate the problem, and the D4 is again the key point, that is the failure analysis. And in here we are going to use the 5M, the 5 Whys, or any other method in order to detect the real root cause of the problem. And then we are going to implement corrective actions. We are going to verify that these corrective actions are effective. And finally, we are going to try to check whether all these previous actions could be used in other products or processes that are currently ongoing in order to implement in there also. And finally, well, recognizing the team efforts carried out during all this methodology. And with this slide, I'm finishing, so I will let Adrian, who is the expert, to finish the webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carlos, for the nice introductions. So, as discussed earlier, so we'll go into the analysis of few nonconformities, and we'll start with one example of wire position deviations or wire desoldering happening at the stringing process. So you can see on the picture on the top right, what is a wire position deviation, where you can see the wire is not in line with the ideal position and is not in contact with the soldering pad on the cell surface. And this one can be detected visually, preferably before lamination. While for the wire desoldering issue, so it's a picture that you have on the bottom, You can see here that the wire in line with the soldering pads, but the soldering strength is not high enough, and we can see here, for example, it's easy to some defective module to insert one piece of paper between the wire and the cell, and that could create some severe issues, especially some hotspots leading to fire degradation. So how to detect such a desoldering issue? We have two ways. Before lamination, we can measure the soldering strength with a special testing equipment. So we do recommend to do that on a sample cell at least once per shift. And after lamination, we can do some EL imaging and see some dark area that are showing that at some location on the module, there is some desoldering effect. So we'll follow the process that was mentioned earlier by Carlos, so the 8D methodology. And the next step is to identify the root cause. And most of the root causes that are leading to desoldering or deviation of the wire are linked to the equipment. So either equipment calibration or maintenance. For example, some temperature outside of range or some heating process that is not uniform. And as well as the positioning of the wire on the cell. So you can see on the top right, we have the 5M category, and this one is typically what we call a machine issue. Fortunately, there are some actions that can be taken to avoid or limit such issue in manufacturing. And the first one is to ensure that when the manufacturer is launching some new products or starting some new factories, there is a proper job that has been done to validate every single step in order to avoid such issue to happen. And we can provide such some service to avoid such issue. For example, some product design and development audit or typical factory audits. Another way is to clearly clarify what are the requirements related to the wires, especially for multi-bus bar cells. And we do have a specific standard at STS, and our addendum related to multi-bus bar has been released in 2020. So we strongly recommend to use this one, which highlight what are all the specifications for multi-bus bar. And another way is to doing the EL imaging to make sure that such issue can be identified. And in this case, we do recommend that EL images is done by experienced operator at the factory with duration of at least 10 seconds per module to make sure that even some small defect can be spotted. A second issue that we can discuss about is air bubbles happening during lamination. This issue can also be classified as a major, as it could potentially lead to delamination and fire hazard. It can be detected visually. After lamination, you can see on the picture on the right, a small bubble in contact with the bus bar. And bubble is not a new topic in our industry. It has happened already years ago with different root causes. For example, for early EVF formulations, there were some gas that were released during lamination, such as carbon dioxide or methane. More recently, around 10 years ago, when some new EVF formulation have been used that were called fast Q or ultra fast Q in order to reduce the lamination cycling time. We have been also observing some bubble happening inside the laminate. And even more recently, with the products such as glass modules becoming mainstream, other encapsulates than EVA have been used, for example, POE. And when launching some new production, it was sometimes also seen that some bubble may happen on the product. So we have also some more recent cases of potential root cause of bubble. First one is some chemical reaction between the flux on the cell surface, some remaining flux and the encapsulation material. One typical issue is that if the lamination parameters are not well set, it could also lead to some bubble. For example, if the temperature is too high or too low, or if the lamination time is not long enough. And one specific case that we can discuss about today is for glass module. when there is not enough encapsulant material on the rear side, especially there is one hole on the rear glass to have the bus bar going through it, and sometimes there is some air trapped in this hole. So to avoid this issue, currently the manufacturer have put a method in place. As you can see on the picture on the right, they put a small patch of extra encapsulation material, so POE in this case, to be able to cover the hole during lamination. And the effect of such a patch can be verified after lamination through a careful visual inspection. The third case is about the lack of silicone sealant. And you can see on the bottom a picture of a cross-section of a PV module. And you can see on the right the aluminum frame where is the laminate also and the silicone sealant around the laminate. And what we can see is that there is an excess of silicone sealant on the bottom, but not on the top side of the laminate. Especially there is one cavity of the frame when there is no silicone sealant at all. And a little bit on the right, we can see that the glass is directly in contact with the aluminum frame. And both issues can potentially lead and have led in the field to some glass breakage, especially at the position where the clamp are put to fix the module. We have seen some cases earlier this year of glass breakage due to this lack of silicone sealant. So that can be spotted in factory with two ways. First, with a visual inspection on the front side, and we can see there is an excess or not of silicone gel between the frame and the glass. If there is no excess of silicone gel, we can measure the depth of the cavity with a filler gauge in order to quantify the clearance between the glass and the frame, especially on the front side. So potential root causes for such issue of lack of silicone sealant. The first one is happening during the framing process, where there is an uneven silicone sealant application, especially on the corner of the module. And another root cause is during the curing time right after the framing. And if this curing is not complete and the module is moved during that period, there is also a risk of having some lack of silicone gel either on the front side or on the back side. So how to mitigate the risk? We've already been speaking about it. So mostly putting in place some visual inspection and measurement of the depth of the cavity on the front side. And if there is no overflow, it's especially important to do such action. So it's performed by the operator of the factory, and it can be also verified by third-party agency. So we strongly do recommend to have some production supervision, including such verification. And also it can be checked during pre-shipment inspection on sample modules on both front side and rear side. The last nonconformity that we'll investigate today is what is called V-shaped cracks, sometimes also called cross cracks. And you can see it's a very specific pattern on the picture on the right with a clearly V shape on the edge of the cell. This issue is mostly detected during EL imaging process, but can happen at previous stages. Two remarks that we can make about such pattern. The first one is that it's mostly happening on the laser cut cells, so the half cut cell or cell cut in three parts. And it's located at the interface between the cell edge and the wire. Like you can see for each of the three wires, we can see there is a crack. And the second remark we can make about it is that the length of this crack is very small, typically around 2 to 5 millimeters. So it can be very hard to spot during manufacturing if the EL image check is not performed by an experienced operator. And the main risk is that the crack may get bigger and bigger during transportation, installation, and then operations, which may lead to hotspots in the short term to middle term. So root cause. So we saw it was mostly happening during on the half-cut cells. And one of the root cause is that there are some local micro defects that can be created during the laser cutting process. So if the manufacturer is not using an adequate process at this stage, this kind of defect might happen. And it can be also in combination with some high mechanical pressure on the cell surface. So indeed, the surface area of contact between the wire and the cell is a line. So it's very small. And especially when you have a reduction of space between the cells in order to gain some efficiency, the pressure will even be bigger. So that can be quite a concern. So this can be solved by doing a proper investigation during the development of the product, or when factories are expanding the capacity to new sites, they have to make sure they're using the proper equipment as well. And one key element is also to make sure that when the EL images is done, it's using proper parameters. So the resolution of the EL imaging must be high enough. We do recommend at least a 12 megapixel. And also the contrast of the picture must also be good enough to be able to distinguish such a defect. And the same remark as earlier, EL images must be performed by experienced operator with at least 10 seconds per module to be able to detect such a tiny defect. So takeaways from this presentation. The first one, first recommendation to a PV module buyer is to make sure that they assess the risk related to the inspection requirement. And STS can support on this by performing some risk assessments in order for the client to take the best decision related to such a risk. So we have different kind of risk ranking, low, medium, or high, by using what we call the RPN methodology. So clients are free to contact us if they need some recommendations about any requirements. The second takeaway for this presentation is to request a production supervision for each step of manufacturing. So we have seen that no process is free of nonconformities, and we strongly recommend to have a 24/7 production supervision at the factory. And also understanding the nonconformities classification in minor, major, and critical is also one important part to be able to understand nonconformities when we are facing them. A third recommendation, as highlighted also by Carlos, is to have a proper methodology when doing the final quality control by applying the 5M, as we saw earlier, and to make a pre-shipment inspection on the sample modules for each lot, as well as laboratory tests. And the last takeaway is to understand that the industry is evolving, new technologies are coming, and each time there is a new technology, there are some new risks that are appearing. So it's very important to be to remain informed by reading articles, as well as reading some studies to make sure that you are up to date with the technology, which does include some STS white papers. Thank you very much for your attention.
Great, thank you very much. So I'd like to invite Carlos back on, and we have some time for a question and answer session now. Quite a few questions from the audience here, so we'll get to as many as we can today. So first off, I'd like to start about different module types. We had a question from the audience. What are some of the most relevant nonconformities that are related to TOPCon and heterojunction technology with comparison to PERC technology that you've observed?
Okay, so I can take this question. So it's quite a new technologies. So so far we have not as many statistics about TOPCon or SGT as we have for PERC technology. But what we can say, we have already identified some risk specific to this technology. For example, for the TopCon, we know that there is a silicon oxide layer that is around 1 nanometer thick, and if this layer is thicker, there is a risk of lower performance, so it can be detected during flash tests. And if this layer of 1 nanometer is thinner than what is expected, there's some risk of pinholes happening, and that can potentially also affect the performance of the modules, which can be detected either for flash test or as well as EL imaging. One recommendation that we would give for those new technologies is to perform some third-party lab tests. So first, what we call extended IC testing sequence, for example, the ICTS 63209-1, which is, for example, 2,000 hours of DEMPIT or 600 cycle of thermal cycling, and there are as well some other tests. And this one can give good indication of what kind of non-conformity could happen on the product. And another recommendation is to perform, as for any kind of new cell structures, a PID test for each batch. And we do also recommend to perform other tests such as Louis radiance or temperature coefficients, because we know that when new technologies are coming, maybe there is some non-uniformity of performance between different lots. So we do strongly recommend to perform such tests. While for the heterojunction, I would say that there are some new technologies to interconnect the cells, like shingling. So some non-conformity could also be detected by electroluminescence. We know also that for heterojunction, the cells tend to be thinner than for other technologies. We could reach around 120 or 130 micrometer thickness. And in this case, some risk of crack also may happen more than for the current technology. So also some EL images are strongly recommended for such a technology.
Great. And what about large format modules? What kind of nonconformities have you seen as the industry shifts more towards that?
So we have been observing some issues related to glass breakage. So what we mentioned earlier for the silicon gel. So either on the front side or on the rear side. And one of the main reasons for that, first is the module is larger, and second one, the glass is thinner than previously. So for a long time, the industry have been using some glass of 3.2 millimeter thickness when it was for glass and backsheet. And the glass was going through a tempering process in order to have some stronger properties and resist to mechanical load. But currently, most of the manufacturers are using some glass with 2 millimeter thick glass, so 2 millimeter on the front side and 2 on the rear side. So total thickness of the laminate is 4 millimeter of glass, but the tempering process is not the same as for earlier. And normally, those glass of 2 millimeter thickness are either semi-tempered or can be also what you call the heat strengthened. So it's not they don't have the same mechanical resistance as earlier. So that's why we estimate that's why we see more cases of glass breakage happening on the side for large size module.
Thanks. And for Carlos, from a project development standpoint, let's say you miss a nonconformity and now the project has been installed. What kind of problems could you see arise in the field? Like, what are maybe 1 or 2 critical issues that may occur if you miss a nonconformity and now the project is installed?
Well, I think that the main issues that we could find on a project, once that everything is constructed, would be right now the PID. I think that this is still happening in some batches of cells, and that's why Adrian was saying that in his opinion, PID should be carried out on a batch basis for N-type, but also for P-type, or I guess so. And obviously we have some hotspots. This is not that critical, but this could be a problem if it is found in too many modules. Mainly, this could happen in the junction box, not only in the cells. So this should be checked on a monthly basis, or maybe, well, on a yearly basis for sure, by your operation and maintenance department. But I think that PID underperformance is the most critical thing for a client, for a developer, and we need to take this into account in order to try to avoid during the manufacturing with good tests, with a good quality control company, and so.
Great. And here in the U.S., we just passed the Inflation Reduction Act. It has over $370 billion for climate and energy spending. A lot of that will go towards supporting new domestic manufacturing lines. I was wondering, are there any nonconformities that you see more frequently with like a brand new production line that's just begun operations, and maybe a couple things to look out for when you're starting a new fabrication?
Adrian, I prefer you to answer this one.
Sure, yes. So yeah, we have seen some capacity increase for manufacturing, especially during the past couple of years. And when we do inspection at new sites, first we do a pre-production inspection where we make sure that the manufacturer is ready to perform the production for the client, and we can find some specific non-conformities. Yes, like what we mentioned earlier about the V-shaped crack. It's something that have happened on some new site of some manufacturer, but didn't happen on the other sites. And that issue can be fixed after some time, but it's always highly recommended to make such pre-inspection analysis. Pre-production inspection analysis before going for an order.
Great. And could you also speak to the increase in automation on production lines? Are there new challenges that you've seen with automation? Has there been a reduction of nonconformities as we move away from manual labor with certain, pieces along the line? Or, what are some specific problems to automation that you've seen?
I would say automation is normally more reliable than the manual workers and can perform faster for sure. But when one issue happen at for example, on a stringer, if it's not immediately reported and detected, it may affect a whole lot. So it's not something that we often see. It was something that we saw in the past, but currently it's getting a bit better. But still, we see time to time some lot rejected because the rate of some specific defect is too high, and sometimes due to automatic process.
Excellent. And we'll run with one more question here, seeing what the audience has. How about thin film and cadmium telluride modules? Are there any problems that you see specific to those, or nonconformities that are more frequent with thin film technology?
It's a good question. We didn't make enough inspection for such specific technology, but we have heard about some specific defects happening in the field, and we are open to support such people who had such defect to help them to do inspection at the factory of thin film manufacturer. But so far we have not clear statistics about non-conformity as such manufacturer.
Great. Well, looks like that's all we have for time for questions. I'd like to thank both of our presenters today. A really informative topic. If you enjoyed today's PV Magazine webinar, be sure to check us out online. I write for our online website. You can scan the QR code there to see some of our most read articles from the week. And if you're interested in subscribing to our print magazine, we have an international circulation as well. And be sure to check out the website for upcoming webinars. We have a few on the way, including how to how a centralized monitoring platform can make your solar asset the center of attention, as well as many others. So be sure to scan the QR code or check that out online. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us today. This has been another PV Magazine webinar, and thanks again to our presenters.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.